Welcome and or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell and today I'm going to be recommending you some fantasy romance books. I'm really excited for this because it has been a minute since I have done a just basic fantasy romance recommendation video. I think it's been almost a year. I've done all sorts of kind of like niche fantasy romance rec videos like Kindle Unlimited fantasy romance, standalone fantasy romance, just all kinds of different tropes and things like that, but just basic, like these are the fantasy romances that I have read recently that I'm obsessed with. And by recently, apparently I mean in the last maybe like 9 or 10 months. So I am in here today because my lighting in the other room is just not going to work. It is a cloudy day. And I've kind of just gotten used to the fact that, listen, if it's a cloudy day, I'm going to be filming probably in the living room, and that's okay. And it's also like up and down, so sorry about that. But yeah, I'm really excited for these recommendations. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you do so. Don't forget to click the like button and comment down below with your fantasy romance recommendations so we can all recommend each other awesome fantasy romance books. I love getting recommendations from you guys. Okay, so I've got my list here. First, I have to recommend a book that I am reading right now, and that is because it is a series that I have to recommend again. I've recommended it a million times, but I'm reading the final book in the series, the 6th book. I'm so sad that I only have a third of it left to read, and it's been such an amazing series to me, and that is the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. So right now I'm reading Goldfinch, which is the final book. The first book is called Guild, and this is a King Midas retelling. And what I love about this series is the character development and the character growth. I also love Raven Kennedy's writing style. I think it's beautiful, and I love the relationship between Slade and Orin. They just have the most beautiful relationship, and Slade is my ultimate book boyfriend. I talked about him in my recent book boyfriend recommendation video, and I love him so freaking much. He's literally the perfect fantasy romance book boyfriend. Perfection. He is perfection, and I love him so freaking much. I'm just having the best time with this 6th and final book, but I'm so kind of sad at the same time because I just don't want it to end. I'm gonna be really sad to have it be over. Like, I know she's coming out with a spin-off kind of book. I don't know if it's gonna be a spin-off series or a spin-off book, but she's coming up with something like that. And I think that's gonna be awesome. I'm excited for that, but I'm also just gonna miss this storyline and Slade and Orin and their relationship because it's so good. But anyway, okay. So that is definitely number one. I had to talk about the Plated Prisoner series, even though it's not a recent one. And yes, I've talked about it in previous fantasy romance recommendations, but it's on my mind, so I'm gonna talk about it. Next, let's talk about a recent read of mine that I just finished at the beginning of this month, and that was Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. This is a dark fantasy romance book, and it's set in a very wintry, cold realm, and it's so atmospheric. It's so fun. It definitely picks up in the second half. Like, I liked the second half so much more than the first half. So if you're unsure about it, keep going because it gets very dark towards the end especially. So this is definitely very dark. From what I've heard, the second book is even darker. This is a duology, and I'm very much looking forward to picking up book 2. Our heroine lives in this like middle realm between the Fae realm and the human realm. And she's a changeling, and her guardian is unalived very early on in the beginning of the story. And she ends up having to work at this pleasure house. When she first starts, she meets this king that is from the Fae realm. The story goes from there. It is so good. It's very dark. And it's, it was a really good book to help me get out of my reading slump because it was very fast paced. It wasn't super long. It was plot heavy and just a fun time. Very readable, very spicy. Like really, really, this book is like a lot of spice. So just know that too going in. The next is a series that I started a few months ago, maybe in November or December, and I'm having the best time already. I have read the first 2 books, and this is Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. The second book is Glow of the Everflame, so I've read both of them and gave them both 5 stars. This is a very epic political fantasy romance series. I cannot wait to pick up Heat of the Everflame. I think it just came out or is about to come out, traditionally published, but it's already out ebook form from the original like self-pub version. I am really enjoying my time with this. Like I said, very political. There's a lot of political maneuverings and calculations. There's a potential brewing war, a potential brewing civil war. There's a lot of stuff going on politically. go in this storyline, which I really enjoy. Our heroine is a healer. She feels like she's being pulled between a lot of sides, between her current significant other and his activities with like the uprising, and then she's also a healer and she has to help heal children that are at the palace and help heal the Fae, or the Descended as they're called. She feels pulled in a lot of different directions, and the romance is so good, and a lot has happened, and I can't wait to see where the story goes. Like, things have opened up a bit more, like things are really moving now at the end of Glow. I'm excited to pick up Heat because it's going to be a good one, I know. If you really like political fantasy romances, that's a really good one to pick out. If you like a more of a fun, fast-paced, twisty-turny ride, you might really like Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. This was possibly my favorite fantasy romance in 2024. It's kind of tied up there with a couple of others. You could ask me, and depending on the day, I might say a different one. Like, I might say When the Moon Hatched, or I might say Spark of the Everflame. I don't know, but I think Metal Slinger, like, a lot of days, if you asked me, I would say that was my favorite book. Like, my favorite fantasy romance book from 2024. Metal Slinger is so much fun. We have this heroine who is part of this military school. She's like she's in the military but in a school at the same time, and they live on these this city that is like a floating city. So I imagine it kind of like the Everglades, where there's like trees that are coming out of the water, and they're able to build piers and like crosswalks and things like that, and buildings on them because of the trees, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a floating city. They have been banished from like the mainland, and we get to go to this market, and it's like once a year, and they're going, and she goes, the heroine, and she gets herself into a little bit of trouble, and things kind of pop off from there. I know that's not much of a synopsis, but I think it's better to go into this one blind. It is very twisty, very turny. There's multiple love interests. There's a lot going on in it. It's just so much fun. I really had the best time. There is a huge twist at the end, and then there's a lot of other twists throughout the story as well. Some people say they don't see where the twist is coming. Some people like that, some people don't. I saw the general theme of the twist coming. I didn't get the full twist. Like, I didn't predict the full twist, if that makes sense. But I definitely didn't think it was out of nowhere. But it was still very surprising and very fun. It literally made the whole book for me. Like, it went from a 4.5 to a 5-star because of the twist. So I highly recommend that one. If you are looking for a why choose fantasy romance and like a new why choose to get into, I've got a couple of recommendations here. Yeah, we'll talk about all my why choose, and then I've got 4 more non-why choose to discuss as well. So this is 12 recommendations total. So let's talk about some why choose. First, Psycho Shifters by Jasmine Mass. I'm obsessed with this series. I read the first 3 books to finish out the first trilogy in this 6-book series. It's 2 trilogies, but you definitely have to read them all in order. You can't start with the second trilogy. You have to read it in order because there's a continuing plot. So the first book is Psycho Shifters. Our heroine finds out she's an alpha and is sent to the war front to fight against the Fae with the other alphas and betas. The 3 alphas that are at this encampment are not, like, they're not happy with her. They don't believe that she could possibly be an alpha. They don't think that she is powerful. She's too scrawny, too weak, all of this stuff. It's a little bit of a bully romance from there, and it's why choose, like I said, and it is so good. It is so freaking good. I love the development of the characters, the development of friendships, the found family, the spice, everything. It's very, very, very good. Though really the first book isn't really spicy. Like a little bit, but like not much. Another why choose that is not super spicy, at least starting out, is Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is going to be a 6-book series, and it all follows the same couple, or not couple, but the same relationship, like polyamorous relationship. And this one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So our heroine is traveling to the Fae realm in search for her father, who has been searching for the Fae realm because he's searching for her mother. She ends up trying to find her father to save him, and he has been imprisoned now by these Fae princes. She exchanges herself for him, and so then she becomes like the prisoner of these 4 Fae princes. And there's also a Prince of Thorns, who is like the prince of like the underworld. So it's actually 5 princes. The Fae princes that she lives with, they're like the prince of summer, spring, autumn, and winter, which I also really like the whole like seasonal Fae kingdoms aspect as well. So this was so much fun. I read the first 2 books with April. We're supposed to be buddy reading the 3rd book soon. If I can get to it, I hope so. But I really am enjoying this series so much. The relationships are very slow burn, so you have to be ready for that one for sure. They're very slow burn. Another one that I actually just read, and I read this in February, was Dark Fae by Carolyn Peckin and Suzanne Valente. This is a book that takes place in the world of the Zodiac Academy, Solaria. And so it takes place in the same world, but it's actually at a different school. And it also takes place 5 years before the events of the Zodiac Academy. So this one does have a couple of characters that end up showing up in the Zodiac Academy series. But it is a why choose. Our heroine is a vampire, and she is in search for her brother's killer. And so she finds out it's supposed to be like the king of this academy. Well, there's actually 4 kings. Obviously, this is going to be a why choose relationship with those 4. And I've read the first book, but I think this is like a 4 or 5 book series, so I have a ways to go, but I gave the first book 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. It gives a lot of the Zodiac Academy vibes, and I really enjoyed that. I like the guys, and I am definitely continuing on with that as well. So many series I need to continue with. A series that I've finished, so I don't have to worry about that. The next one I choose is Twilight of Embers by Tessa Hale. Now this one, I will say, is not like the best writing in the world. It's not like groundbreaking, okay? This is not like literature. This is not very well written, to be honest, but why could I not put it down? I literally binge read the whole series in less than a week. I don't know. It's not great. But I was also obsessed with it and had to binge read the whole series. So I had to recommend it because it's not very often a series makes me want to binge read it and just read the whole thing, but this one did. So obviously there's something to that. So obviously recommending that one. This is Dragon Shifters. Our heroine doesn't know that she's a dragon shifter. She is headed off to school. This is like a normal like mortals like university, but there are shifters that go to it and paranormal creatures and things that go to it, and some of them are dragon shifters. There's this dragon shifter horde, and they are all like brothers or whatever, and she is their mate, and they're not actual brothers, but you know what I'm saying, but they recognize immediately that she is their mate. And the things that happen to this heroine in this series are crazy. Like, she just keeps getting beat up, and then the boys keep saying like, we're gonna protect you, it's never gonna happen again, and then someone else comes and attacks her, because there's all these different like bad guys and different like action plot lines, and apparently everyone in the world hates her and is out to get her, from her classmates to other dragon hordes to you name it. She is apparently target number 1. They're constantly trying to be her like bodyguards, and apparently constantly failing also. So that one it's a good time, but just know going in, like, I didn't send you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't recommend that to you, but I really did like it. But I did. I was obsessed, you know? Sorry, the lighting keeps on like changing. The next ones are not white shoes. So I've got 4 more fantasy romances to talk about. This one is a dark fantasy romance that I really enjoyed and surprised me. I did not think I was going to be as obsessed with this as I was. And that was How Does It Feel by Janine O'Reilly. This is about a scientist. She's working at this like nature reserve, and she is in search of these moths. There's like Luna moths, but in order to find them, something to do with mushrooms, and she's looking to like get more of these mushrooms in this area because there's some kind of connection with them and Luna moths. I don't freaking know. It's science. I don't know. Anyway, the point is she finds herself in a fairy circle one night and drops right down on the head of the Prince of the Unseelie Fae. He's not happy to see her. He thinks she's an assassin, and he decides to take her captive and torture her and try to unalive her. And he was repeatedly trying to unalive her, but not do it himself because that would be like too low for him or something like that, because she's just apparently scum. So she keeps like not being unalived. Anyway, he ends up falling in love with her, even though he's also trying to like unalive her. and it's just a mess. It's a total mess. There's some trials too, which are super fun. This is very like underground, kind of grimy, like unseelie, almost like Fortuna Sworn, where it's kind of like gritty and very underground unseelie, like the dark side of unseelie kind of thing. Like nature and I don't know how to explain it. Okay, but that feeling from Fortuna Sworn is very similar to this one, which I really like that. I want more like that. I really like that kind of depiction of Fae, and it was a lot of fun. It's also really, really dark, so please check triggers because that one is dark and there's some really weird dark things that happen in it too. So next is Of Blades and Wings. This is by Eliza Rain. She is a really well-known fantasy romance author. She's got a lot of stuff out, but I've never picked up her work before, and this was the first one. This is a Viking-inspired fae fantasy. It's got a Valkyrie kind of a training camp, training school setting, and our heroine is I guess it's like a classic trope where something's wrong with her in that she comes across very weak, but she's actually very strong, but she's very weak at the same time. She has like a fainting disease, so she is like always fainting, but she also has the secret power that no one knows about that she thinks may be connected to her fainting, and that's kind of like a knowledge, like a power of knowledge where she can like store knowledge in her brain. I don't know how to explain it. Kind of weird, but it's pretty unique and fun too. So this series is very like, the books are pretty short. It's not like a super epic political fantasy romance. It's a little bit more like, not YA, but in that where it's very like plot driven and not super deep, not that political. The world it building is not that complicated. It's pretty straightforward fantasy romance, like a very fun 4-star palate cleanser type of fantasy romance for me, which definitely has its place and why I want to recommend it, because everyone's looking for different things in fantasy romance, or also depending on your mood, you may be someone that really likes a political epic fantasy romance, but like maybe you also need a break sometimes, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's a good time to pick up Tessa Hale or Eliza Rain, you know? So that one's a fun time. Another one that I think is a pretty kind of a little bit more surface level fantasy romance, but also still really fun, a little bit more unique in world building even than Of Blades and Wings, is A Dawn of Onyx. And this one, the world building is really cool because you have all of these different kingdoms and each one is labeled and themed based on a crystal, like a gemstone. So there's like the Onyx Kingdom, and they're like, if you look at their nature and all these things, they're very much related to onyx. Like they have mines there. Our heroine is from Amber, and in Amber, it's almost like it's always fall. So they are harvesting apples, and the trees are kind of like the leaves are falling. Everything is very yellow and orange, kind of burnt color, you know? And I think that's a very cool kind of theme. So like I know in the next book, it's called A Promise of Peridot. That's the second book I really want to read soon here. So that's set, I'm assuming, at Peridot. I'm not sure. It's really cool. I really like the unique world building in this one. We also have like a really fun like enemies to lovers romance in this, and our heroine has healing abilities. She is taken prisoner by the Onyx Kingdom, and so that she can use her healing abilities that are very unique. She can use them on his soldiers. So that is kind of the synopsis. She's kind of held there captive, and she ends up obviously having a relationship with someone there, and it's really good. That one is a lot of fun. Finally, I have to recommend one of my all-time favorites, another one that sometimes I'm like, maybe that was my favorite fantasy romance from 2024, and that was Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. This one hit the world by storm for a reason. It was so good. This one is so freaking good. So this one has a portal kind of aspect. It's portal fantasy. Our heroine is growing up in this, like she's living in this desert queendom, and the queen is like a tyrant who is withholding water from poorer areas of the city, and even the other areas too. Like water is rationed, and so people are thirsty, people are starving, kind of just trying to get by. She steals from one of the queen's guards and gets caught, and so she is taken in front of the queen to answer for her crimes, and in the process she ends up accidentally opening up a portal, and Kingfisher comes out of that portal and takes her to the Fae realm. Kingfisher is our hero, our love interest, and it is an enemies to lovers romance. So she ends up in this wintry, blustery, cold, snowy, Arctic fae kingdom, and she meets the king there, and he now wants to use her powers that she doesn't really know much about. He wants to use her powers for this project, and Kingfisher has to help her do it. So they have to be working together at this, what is that called? Like when you are like a forge, like forging metal. So they have to work at the forge together to work on this project. And so it's forced proximity. They're forced to work together. It's so good. It's so good because they have so much tension between the two of them, but there's so much banter and them like hating each other and like swapping insults back and forth. It's just so good. The banter is so good. The tension is so good. The spice is so good in this one. Oh my gosh, the spice. Kingfisher, top book boyfriend. I'm obsessed with him. So highly, highly recommend this one. It's also very political as well, but it's also very like action packed, and it's going to be very epic. I'm excited. I think they're going to be turning that into a movie or a TV show. I'm not sure, but I will be there watching it. So I hope you like this video. I hope you like these fantasy romance recommendations. If you want to check out more fantasy romance content from me, I will have a playlist linked down below with a bunch of my fantasy romance content because I have done a lot of it. I love fantasy romance. If you haven't already subscribed and you like fantasy romance content, don't forget to do so and click the like button if you haven't already. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.